Hi, everybody. Welcome to a special bonus episode of Horsepower Heritage. I'm Maurice Merrick. And as we move into autumn, the calendar is bursting at the seams with a bunch of great automotive events. And today we're going to be talking about a very special gathering that's happening this weekend. To the east of New York City lies Long Island, and the village is known as the Hamptons, which for generations were home to farmers and fishermen, and it was also the summer retreat for wealthy New York families. Today it's best known as a playground for the rich and famous, but the area also has an interesting history in terms of motorsport, because for decades it was home to the Bridgehampton race circuit, a 2.85-mile road course that was considered one of the finest racetracks in America. Everyone from Briggs Cunningham to Mario Andretti raced at the bridge, and it saw action from the SCCA in the 50s, CanAm in the 60s, and even NASCAR made a showing at one time. As you're about to hear, the bridge was eventually doomed by circumstance, only to be reimagined as a luxury golfing club. But the racing heritage has been preserved in more ways than one, and my guests today have written a new chapter with the creation of an event called The Bridge, an exclusive gathering of cars and brands, what they call the finest garden party in the car world. Shamin is the founder of a boutique public relations and marketing firm, and Jeffrey Einhorn is a New York attorney. And if they sound like an unlikely team, wait until you hear how the whole venture came together. But just imagine hundreds of the world's most desirable cars, along with luxury brands, the best culinary offerings, and some primo cocktails, and maybe throw in a few arrivals by private helicopter, and you'll have an idea of the bridge. And who doesn't want that invitation, right? Guys, I know I say this every time, but it's important. Don't forget to leave me 5 stars and a quick review if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And tell your friends about the show. Maybe send them a link to your favorite episode. All of those things really do help me reach more people like you. All right, stay right there. I've got Shamin and Jeff Einhorn, founders of The Bridge. And that's coming up right after this. This episode of Horsepower Heritage is sponsored by Model Citizen Diecast. No matter what's in your garage, you can fit all your automotive heroes on a shelf. And they've got you covered, whether it's 1/43rd scale, 1/18th scale, or even the ginormous 1/8 scale masterpieces from the Amalgam Collection. Go to modelcitizendiecast.com and get 10% off when you use the promo code HERITAGE at checkout. Limitations apply. From race cars to street cars and everything in between, it's Model Citizen Diecast, because your inner child still wants to play with cars. Shamin and Jeff Einhorn, thanks for being on the show. This is going to be fun.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So September 23rd, it's the 7th edition of The Bridge. You guys have planted your flag in the Hamptons, and it's fast become one of the premier events on the car calendar every year.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, that's high praise.
Well, I mean, I'm really excited to talk about how you sort of select the entries and curate things. But, you know, it's a very crowded car calendar every year, and it's a big challenge to make an event significant and important, and you have managed to do that. So I applaud you for that. And the other thing about this is that it's not simply another concours. There's a long history behind the venue for the event.
Yeah, that's correct. So road racing actually in Bridgehampton goes back about as early as anywhere in the United States to about 1915. They had town races, and they were set up by the fire department, and they were there was a 3-mile loop that went around downtown. What ended up happening is it got bigger and bigger, and then in 1949 it got even bigger, and there was an accident actually up by Watkins Glen, another famous track in New York, in road racing, and the state of New York made it very, very difficult to continue road racing. And by road racing, I mean what we think about with open-wheeled race cars and basically hay bales lining the streets and people jumping in front of them. And there were accidents frequently and people got hurt frequently. And there was a push to move racing, which was extraordinarily popular at the time, onto formal racetracks. So starting in about 1953, they started selling shares of stock outside of Candy Kitchen, which is a well-known and still there ice cream shop. And I don't know, Shamin, what else would you call it? They sell like grilled cheese sandwiches.
Yeah, basically. The best breakfast.
The best breakfast in the Hamptons. They sold shares of stock to build what became the bridge, which opened in 1957. The track was laid out by Grumman engineers, actually. So, it's something that was a labor of love from the get-go from everyone involved that wanted to make it happen. It held on for a very, very long time, and it was quite famous. The track is where McLaren based their U.S. operations for many, many years. It was the kind of like the lead in CanAm racing in the United States. The SCCA championships were held there many times. It was, Lime Rock, Watkins Glen, and the Bridge were the big three tracks if you were on the East Coast of the United States and you were north of Sebring, basically, in Daytona. These were the big ones. What ended up happening is that Bridgehampton and the Hamptons in general started to really elevate as far as the value of the property. And it became more difficult to operate a full-time racetrack. At one point, our third partner in the bridge, Bob Rubin, purchased the rest of the shares, to the extent they were available, to the bridge and became the owner of the property itself. And when racing could no longer be held there because of noise restrictions from the neighbors, basically, who started to complain, he shut it down and it became just a private track for a while. And when it looked like the town basically wanted the plot to be subdivided, it's one of the largest single-owner plots in the Hamptons still. Instead of falling prey to that, he kind of like Willy Wonka just shut the doors to the whole thing and spent the next several years planning, and it became a golf course. But not just any golf course, but a golf course that very, very strictly preserves the history of a place that is sacred to many, many people, including Bob. So when you come into the bridge, you can actually drive on to the front straight. So, you go into one of the most expensive clubs in the world and you say, why has this not been repaved here? This looks like this is starting to crumble on the ground. It's because it's the front straight from the last time the track was used. You go under the Chevron Bridge. There are timing towers, wood timing towers everywhere. There are hidden in the woods, and I'm not saying people should head out there, but they're in the woods. There are signs, hand-painted signs still from those racing days. And, when you're there, when you walk in, it just feels magical. They haven't put a ton of structures on the property. They're actually very, very few. So you walk in and you could be racing there, which is actually sometimes a problem for people coming into the event because we don't want them racing down the front straight. But people try all the time. But that's the history.
Yeah, it's fascinating. You guys, there's a parallel, believe it or not, in Beverly Hills, of all places. From 1920 to 1924, before Beverly Hills really started to get developed, there was a banked board track, and they had races there, and the Miller cars were tested there. One of the Chevrolet brothers was killed in a race there. And also one of the investors was Cecil B. DeMille, the film director. But by 1924, property values had skyrocketed and the neighbors began to complain about the noise. And the track was difficult to maintain. Board tracks were constantly needing repair. So anyway, the Beverly Hills Speedway was bulldozed, and now it's all, luxury properties over there, but a parallel to the bridge. And, another thing, Jeff, that this makes me think of, you talk about preserving the former history and heritage. I don't know if you know about Bicester heritage in England, but Bicester was an airfield during World War II, and it's been redeveloped as sort of a car mecca, if you will. They have a lot of events, and they've got restoration businesses there and everything, but they've preserved a lot of the original buildings. So places like this are so special, and there are so few of them left.
Yeah, especially in areas where property values, like you said, have skyrocketed. It's very, very difficult, and it takes someone or some people who have a very unique vision and very, very strong-willed so as not to cave to, the money that's being offered, to build there.
Right. Well, I mean, they're preserved out of a love and out of the means, those few people who have the means to do so. But Jeff, I know that you are a car guy from day one, right? I mean, your dad got you into this stuff. You've been involved in racing and collecting, and you're a BMW aficionado. Tell me about your car journey.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I don't think I had a choice in the matter like so many people who get involved in this. I grew up restoring and working on Austin Healey's. I raced Austin Healey's for a while. My father actually still races an Austin Healey. I've taken a reprieve from my racing days. I can't take on anymore new activities. It was funny because I moved to New York City to go to law school, and it became very, very difficult to be a car person in New York City. And I remember at one time I think it was the mid 2000s, I had something like 11 cars, and I had them stashed in like different friends' places in New York City and Westchester and anywhere I could find a spot. It became very, very, very difficult. But yeah, I went in with BMWs. I was very heavy on old M cars, and I remember I had 3 E34 M5s, the last hand-built M cars at the same time, and we'd be taking parts from one and putting them on the other, and then had a pair of Cosworth Mercedes in the city at the same time. It's another loved car. Those were great. It takes a really special type of dedication to be a vintage car guy in the city. I hovered around 80s and 90s cars for a long time, but I bring my Healeys into the city, and we bring them, we drive them around, and they get just smiles from everybody, which is really truly fantastic. Thankfully, as all the ventures that I've been involved in have continued to succeed, including being a practicing lawyer, I've been able to move up the chain a little bit. So I was thinking earlier today, I have an Aston Martin Vanquish, as I was dropping it off at the garage to make room for the the Ferrari FF that you guys have heard rumbling in the background before. I've been very, very lucky to kind of play in all of the new toys, and these activities permit it. But yeah, I've done everything from, judge events to, with Shamin, produce events, to race. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And I think it's in Shamin's blood too. We got to bring you in here, because first of all, you're a bona fide enthusiast yourself, but cars are also a business for you in a sense, indirectly, I suppose, but you get to be around some amazing machines, and get paid to do it.
Yes, indeed. Well, so to clarify, it's actually horsepower I love. Usually the full-legged are my preference. But yes, I do love and appreciate cars. With Jeff is the perfect compliment to me because he knows about cars. I don't really know about cars, but I know I love them and I know what I love. Yeah, from a business standpoint, I guess.
Wait, Shamin, I have to interrupt. I'm sorry. You say that you don't know about cars, but that's so not true. If you put you up against someone else who didn't know about cars, you would be so far in the 99th percentile of people who know about cars. You could go to car people and ask them what a zinger is, and you work with them, and you could talk about their construction techniques and the manufacturing. So I think you're pretty far. You can deny it, but you're pretty far the other way.
Maurice, what I mean is, and I think what I enjoy most about car people, let's say, putting people together who share this passion. I could listen to them for at least 45 minutes, maybe an hour. Sometimes I have to separate Bob and Jeff, because when they start talking about cars, it could go on for hours and hours and hours. So that's what I mean when I say I don't really know much about cars, because I don't know how to think that they know, but I know I love them and I appreciate them. And yes, on the business side, I do have the pleasure of working with some incredible car companies, both on the communications and the PR side, which my communications team do an incredible job with, and on the experiential side and bringing them to life through experiences, and those that are prospective buyers for them. So listening to all the things that they say as they're experiencing with them for the first time. So we work with Zinger, and we work with Ferrari North America and Aston Martin and Rolls-Royce and others. Maserati, we represent Maserati in the US as well, which is rather incredible. So yes, I guess I do know a little bit about cars, but not as much as Jeff, that's for sure.
No, I think you're definitely being humble. And I would say that we're all three of us privileged to be around some incredible machines, some very high-end machinery. But Shamin, I'm curious about how you began your firm, because I think you guys have a fantastic niche, and I'm interested to hear about sort of your entrepreneurial side.
Oh, thank you. Well, it started about 20 years ago, the kitchen table, just, having been on the, let's say, the receiving end of multiple communications firms that didn't understand our ideal customer. So it really started with that, really trying to figure out the psychology and what motivated and connected and engaged a prospective customer with a certain brand. And in the beginning, it was a little more diverse. We did a little bit of everything, but it narrowed and narrowed and narrowed and narrowed, and then became very focused on particularly companies that create products for those that can select anything. I found that fascinating, how there were Ferrari guys and there were Lamborghini guys, and there were those that just were drawn to that company, and not just from the product standpoint, but from the way that the company interacted with them. And I found that absolutely fascinating. So many years later, it really narrowed and narrowed. And then many years later, it landed on, extraordinary toys, for lack of a better word, from automotive to marine. We work with submarines and incredible yachts and, the most incredible car companies in the world. And that's where I really found my joy in igniting that further interest and connection for those that have the natural inclination to fall in love with the brand and the brand itself, and becoming that bridge, no pun intended, between the two. So I think that's what happened. And I have, I'm very fortunate to have drawn an incredible team of people who work with me. And we have a lot of passion for what we do. We enjoy it very much.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So now let's put this together for everyone. So you've got Bob Rubin, who's an enthusiast and, had the means to essentially claim the bridge and redevelop it as a luxury golf course. Then you've got Shamin, who's a PR master. And then you've got Jeff, who's got the legal side of things. He's got that legal mind, plus he's got the car background. Shamin, how did you all three get together and decide, hey, we need to create this event?
Well, unfortunately, we don't have a bottle of wine with us right now, because the story really does require a great bottle of wine, a great dinner. And there's so many funny moments within this story of how it all came to be. And we often reflect on it, because it is serendipitous beyond anything you can imagine. But basically, Bob Rubin very kindly allowed me to bring Ferrari North America into the bridge back in 2013, I think it was, or 2014, for their, I should remember this because it was their 60-year anniversary of being in North America. And they had charged us with developing an experience for their 60 top owners on the East Coast. And we conceptualized this extraordinary rally that at one point during the rally, we shut down Times Square, and these 60 cars drove through Times Square, which was very exciting. That's where the rally started, and it needed to conclude somewhere. We were going to stop up at Miller Motor Cars in Connecticut, where that was the first dealer in the U.S. So anyway, without going on too much about that story, Bob Rubin, who had really didn't allow brands to come into the club and do things, being very rightfully so protective of his members, not wanting to be marketed to, after countless sort of outreach to him. And I always joked that I had to send a pigeon with a note attached to its a leg, but he finally agreed to meet with me, and very kindly agreed to allow me to bring Ferrari in there for this big moment. And it was following that that I took him out to lunch, and I said, Bob, wouldn't it be interesting to do some more things together? And we started talking about this idea of, wouldn't it be interesting to bring back the history of the club and perhaps show the cars that used to race there in its heyday. And honestly, I, at the time, and I don't think Bob either, thought anything about what it could be. It was more so my brands would happily come in and sort of fund something like that, to have the opportunity to connect with members, but it would be strictly for members at the time. So following that, we started investigating this a little bit and showed a couple of prospective sponsors, which we needed, obviously, the funding to do this, to come in and take a look at the club, but it didn't really get moving. And at one point, Bob said to me, look, Shamin, back to the idea that I don't know cars. He said, you know a little bit about cars, but you don't know cars. We're missing a very important link. We're missing that third link, which is key to this. And that is finding someone who knows cars who can put this exhibition together, because I'm not going to do it, even though he was, and is an incredible enthusiast and collector himself. He was providing the bridge. Fast forward now to Pebble Beach, 2015. I am standing at a reception, and someone introduces me to Jeff, and we start chatting. And Jeff goes on to tell me as we're chatting, Jeff chats a lot, by the way. And Jeff started telling me when I told him that I spent time in the Hamptons. I don't remember exactly what I said, but I certainly didn't say anything about the bridge. He started telling me that he had long been planning. He had this idea of doing this incredible event in the Hamptons that brought back the old road racing history. And as he was telling me this story, I'll never forget him saying, there's a key part of this. He said, you won't know about this, but there's a club called The Bridge. And he said, I tried everything to reach the owner of this club and he won't get back to me. And to which I just smiled and thought, this is very interesting. And I said, Jeff, when we get back to New York, maybe we should get together and have a drink. I didn't want to say anything at the time. It's due diligence and find out if this guy was legit. And also sort of check him out on the car side to make sure. I didn't know which questions to ask, but I wanted to make sure that Bob knew. So long story short, that's exactly what happened. We went back to New York. We met one night over a drink, which turned into burgers also, late night burgers. And we talked and talked and talked and talked. I told him the surprise that I'd been keeping, which was that Bob and I had already talked about a partnership. And a few weeks later, I introduced him to Bob over a lunch. And I mentioned earlier the idea that I have to separate them after a couple of hours of talking about cars. And that's what took place that lunch. And that is the beginning of the beautiful magic that happened between Jeff, Bob, and I. And the rest is history.
What a great story. Shamin,
did you just call me the missing link?
Shamin, I have to tell you, I would not have been able to keep my cool in that situation. I would have immediately said, oh my gosh, we have got to team up. That's amazing.
Well, I was very excited, but the only thing I knew to do at that moment, because I did want to spill the beans to tell him, say, well, let me tell you. But I knew how important this could be because I had already gone through, the experience of working with Bob on the Ferrari program, which I really kept him very close in what I was doing and showed him what we were going to be doing there to the point that it would be interesting for him. And he did contribute in a beautiful way to that experience to make sure it was authentic. Because actually many Ferrari drivers had won there, won races at the bridge. So, or raced at the bridge, right, Jeff? So there was a lot of interest on his part. He was talking about an exhibition with him. So I really wanted to make sure that the man standing in front of me was everything I thought he was. So the only way I knew how to handle this was to say, I got to go, but we should have a drink back in New York. And that's when I headed off. So that's how it all worked.
Yeah, you sort of have to make sure that Jeff is the right guy in more ways than one, not just an enthusiast, but has the resources and the acumen and all of that. That's totally understandable. But what an exciting moment. And, you referenced different drivers at the bridge. I just have to say, just for background for the audience, the SCCA championships were there from 57 to 64 and dominated by Briggs Cunningham.
Yeah.
Then the U.S. Road Racing Championships from 65 to 68, which was CanAm, which, Jeff, you mentioned earlier. And so many of the great drivers raced there. Sterling Moss, Mario Andretti, Jim Hall, Dan Gurney. Just the history it goes on and on and on.
Yeah, that's where Andretti taught Newman to drive for the most part.
That's right.
Where he taught Paul Newman to drive. We have pictures in the archives at the bridge of the two of them together, and it's just they're all black and whites, and Andretti teaching Paul Newman to drive. It's amazing.
Yeah, Wow. So with that racing background fully understood, but the bridge as an event has a racing emphasis, a competition emphasis, right? But you also invite a pretty good variety of cars. I mean, you've got everything from muscle cars to D-type Jaguars. In fact, I saw in one of the photos you had a Land Rover 101 with a vampire body, which is like an ex-military, sitting in one of the sand traps. There's a little bit of something for everyone, right?
Yeah. So, it started out with us primarily focusing on cars that would have raced or could have raced at the bridge starting in 1957 until it closed its doors. And what ended up happening is it really grew into a reflection of our love affair of cars. So it's not just those cars, although we do try to focus on the history of racing in Bridgehampton in particular. So, for instance, this year we have a 1966 Lola AAR T70 Eagle, which was Dan Gurney's race car. And it won at the bridge in 1966. And it's actually the only car with a Ford engine, we're told, to win a CanAm race during the 66 to 74 series. So another like very, very impressive one, a car that was rescued 20 years ago from a chicken coop and then brought back to life. So that car is being brought back home this year. That we do have a very eclectic taste, I think, as you pointed out. So we started putting cars in the sand traps on our first year. It's something that we thought was kind of cute and funny. We started with Myers-Manx's. We had a good friend of Shamin and I who collects them, and every year he would volunteer one or two, and then it grew, and we started having Land Rover, forward control vehicles in them. And this year, actually, we have grown even greater and created Bridge Beach. So Bridge Beach is a little bit of Montauk surf culture and a little bit of the south of France. And we have it must be 75-meter long waste bunker that's about 30 meters wide. And it is a full beach with umbrellas and, summertime cocktails. And it's really divided up into two different areas. We've got a giant group of Lee Keen's 911 Project Safari cars. And then we have some other rally cars. And then we just have some amazing Montauk surf culture vehicles. So we've got 23-window VW buses with surfboards. We have a 74 308 GT4 Dino Ferrari with a 27-foot rowing skull mounted to the top of it. We've got cars with barbecues. We have the Pontiac Catalina 101 party wagon. So the idea is just, it's not just race cars, and it's not just things that are serious. It's, we were supposed to have fun when we were doing this. And so the bridge is really a reflection of all of those things.
And the inaugural event in 2016, you had 62 cars, and it just keeps growing every year. How many entries are there this year, Jeff?
Oh. This year, we're going to have between 340 and 350 cars on display. Wow. So it is a giant undertaking. I mean, to put it in context, the Quail puts out just about 200 cars every year. Pebble Beach is a few more. We have a lot of cars. And what we try to do is keep it to, if we can, a 1-to-10 ratio of cars to people. And what this does is it allows everyone to have a lot of personal time with each car. People aren't fighting to get photos. You can get your Instagram moment with the car. You're allowed to connect with them without, fighting your way into it. It's just something that's much more special. We also, as I'm sure you've seen, Maurice, from the photos, we don't just put cars in a line. That's just not particularly interesting to me or Shamin or anybody else. This is a non-judged exhibition. It's not a concours in the traditional sense. We have things that are out there for visual impact. So instead of, hats and clipboards and people judging things about matching screws, if we end up with 5 of the same car, we'll do an interesting design with them. This year, for instance, we've got, I want to say, 8 original slant nose Porsches. So instead of having them all lined up, we were working on the shapes today, and we have them in pinwheels because it's funny and it's cute, and it leaves a stronger visual impact than just walking up to a line of cars, right? Because cars are meant to be seen not on grass, but while they're driving, and so we can't replicate that so much, except for load in at the bridge, but we can put them in a different place where they kind of make you feel differently than if they were just in a parking lot.
Yeah, it's really kind of an art installation to me. And that might sound a little bit highfalutin, but placement is really important. And you want the best visual impact, like you say. So I think you guys do a tremendous job. I'm only sorry I can't be there. Thank you, by the way, for the invitation. I hope to be there next year. Schedule is crazy at the end of the month for me, but I know it's going to be a fantastic day. I think also it's important that you say it's not judged, because there are politics involved in judged events, whether people want to admit it or not. And you've just avoided that completely, which is good.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny when you're one of 3 people that create something, you get to take your entire experience and inject it into that thing that you're creating. So some of the things that I always disliked as a kid, was waking up at 5 a.m. with my dad on a weekend, on a Saturday or a Sunday, usually on a Sunday, and driving in Austin Healey out to a car show, and then sitting there with butterflies in your stomach, not having even eaten because it's so early while they come around and judge your car. And there is a place for that in this world, and that's fantastic. It's really not for me. We put on a garden party, so we don't have something that starts at 5 or 6 or 7 or 9 in the morning. We start at 2, There's no judging. And because there's no judging, I can't tell you the number of people that have come up to Shamin and I and Bob during the bridge and said, this was just a great time to see my friends, to see the cars, to connect with everybody, and not feel like I was competing, and it's not a competition. It's not, you've already won. You're in. That's it.
Shamin, I'd be interested to hear about the job. So a lot goes on behind the scenes in order to attract brands and coordinate things. And maybe this is a little bit too much like inside baseball, but when you go to an event like this, the average spectator doesn't maybe really think about a lot of this stuff, but it's so important.
Yeah. I mean, the experiences we specialize in experiential marketing, in event marketing in this space. I think the detail with which this is viewed, every single element from the very beginning contributes to the experience for all our guests, and it is by invitation. So we spend quite a bit of time sort of batting off requests, obviously, that come in that, everyone looking for tickets, and we hate to say no, but it is by invitation, and we're limited to how many guests we can have. So I think that on the brand side of it, and again, understanding what brands, what I'm looking for when I go in representing a brand, for this, any sort of event like this that isn't owned completely by the brand, where you'll have other folks walking around, we're interested in what their objectives are and how we can integrate each and every single brand as if it was our own client, and in a way that is going to be meaningful to them. And fortunately so, our brands just keep coming back year after year. Now, sometimes there's a change within corporation and a brand, new person comes in and doesn't know the experience as well, or has their own ideas about how they want to invest their money. And, a brand will drop off once in a while. And as it happened to us recently, and literally there were 2 in the same category waiting to come in right behind them in the wings. And there was a little bit of a sort of a battle going on within 1 week to get one of them, whoever signed first at that point. They were both equal and incredible. But yes, that's how we approach it. We think about what's going to mean. How do they want to connect with the people that are there? How do they want their own top customers to experience this? And also guiding them through the process, because especially when a new brand partner comes on, we do tell them that they're going to get a lot of heat from their top customers who are going to want access to this once they know they're involved, and the word spreads very quickly. When I tell you, we get hundreds and hundreds of requests from collectors, enthusiasts, folks that like to attend these sorts of special things, by invitation things that reach out to us every year. And that's exactly the experience they have. The brands realize, they extend the invitation to their own top customers, and then within a short period, as soon as the word gets out that they're a partner, their own customers are just demanding demanding tickets. So it's a wonderful experience to take them through and guide them through, and help them display themselves, help them activate there in a way that's really going to be meaningful, so they keep coming back, because we know we know our collectors very well. And the interesting thing that's really happened there and has been very fruitful, let's say, for our brand partners, is that we've developed this incredible, we sort of talk about sort of inner workings. We're calling it the inner circle. And it's really this incredible group of dear friends who are top collectors from around the country, who are excitedly telling us, as we arrive in Monterey for Monterey Car Week, what they're bidding on, because they're planning on bringing it to the bridge if they get it at the auctions. And these folks are not only coming every year, but they're spreading the word to their friends and introducing us to close friends of theirs who have become friends of ours. In fact, on Thursday evening this week, we'll be welcoming quite a few of them at a dinner on Thursday night who have really become close friends. And they mark this on their calendar every year. They wouldn't miss it for the world. And that circle just keeps gradually expanding into new, incredible collectors who are now shipping cars from everywhere, some from different parts of the world, but most certainly from other parts of the US, who will not miss this thing no matter what.
Yeah, it's terrific. And although this is an invitation-only event and it's quite exclusive, there's been a growth of satellite events surrounding the bridge. Let's talk about that for a minute.
There's really kind of 2 categories of satellite events that have popped up. And just to begin, when Shamin and I and Bob sat down, we started talking about this. This is what we wanted. We wanted there to be all these other things popping up because that's what makes this fun and interesting. It's like going to Monterey Car Week where you just, you bump into, a rally on your way to another event. There's always so many things going on that you can't even, you couldn't hit everything if you tried, and you wouldn't want to because you'd be exhausted. Now, I don't want our guests to be exhausted, but we do want, we wanted a long weekend full of events, and we've been able to do that. The first thing that we did ourselves was create a Cars and Coffee on Sunday in downtown Bridgehampton that is open to the public. It is free of charge. It runs from 9 to 11, 8 to 11, Shamin?
Well, people show up very early. I don't know what the official time is.
They show up early anyhow. So, and we have, a great culinary experience with food from Smorgasburg, which is very big in New York City. And we get hundreds of cars out there right in the middle of town, and it is fantastic. The other thing is that we created the Bridge at Topping Rose. So that's an event that we brought downtown at Topping Rose House. That one you can actually buy tickets to, but it is a brunch prepared by Jean-Georges Vaudrechon, and Shamin can speak to that. But the menu is, I love food, as you can tell, but it is beyond insane. But, other events have popped up on their own, and they have become very, very exclusive in their own right. There is the Rally Road and Valve and Piston Rally, which everyone has been seeing online. I get maybe 10 requests a day for people to join it. People who aren't showing at the bridge even, they just want to do it. It has become a very exclusive part of the weekend. We do integrate ourselves with them, so we work hand in glove to make sure that the timing works out because so many of our guests like to participate. I'll be participating in it to the chagrin of our team. But but yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. There are dinners now. There are lunches, there are picnics. I'm aware of probably 4 other rallies going on at the same time during, that Thursday to Sunday bridge period. And it's fantastic. And it's come to the point where now, you drive out there, and if it's that Thursday to Sunday, you're going to see incredible cars just parked anywhere on the streets of Bridgehampton, from, Ferrari GTOs to, vintage Maseratis, everything. And it's what we envisioned. And I can't believe it's actually occurred.
I love these types of events that create an alternate universe for a weekend or a week or however long, where everywhere you go, you see amazing machines on the road. Monterey is like that. I'm sure that Bridgehampton is like that.
Yeah, it really is.
Let's talk a little bit more about Topping Rose, because that's open to everyone, right?
It is. We are limited on numbers there, so we're capped at 500 guests. Jean-Georges doesn't want to go above 500, understandably so. So he can present a meal which is extraordinary, but it's really multiple signature stations of his most incredible menu items at his various restaurants. But that is an event that everyone can enjoy. We raise money for a local organization where we actually change the organization that we support each year so that we're spreading the love. This year it's Hampton's Community Outreach. And that event takes place from 11 till 2. And there are tickets online. If you search for the Bridge at Topping Rose House, those come up. But phenomenal food, phenomenal drinks, live jazz, and incredible cars, representative of actually the road racing days of Bridgehampton, which is something different for people to see. Very, very cool, right, Jack?
Yeah, we try not to duplicate cars from the bridge. We will bring down a few of kind of the best of the best, but we like to have a different showing for the Bridge at Topping Rose, because we find that, especially for those who are exhibiting cars with us, they're with us from Friday for, a lot of them will be at the rally Friday morning, but they'll be with us for the Friday night collector's reception all the way through Saturday at the bridge to, Cars and Coffee on Sunday to Bridge at Topping Rose Sunday afternoon for brunch. And so we want to make sure that they're seeing fresh cars the entire time, and they really do.
Very cool. And by the way, we would be remiss if we didn't mention another venture of yours, which sort of, in the wake of the success of the bridge, you guys have gotten together and started something called Car Coterie. What is that?
Well, Car Coterie, coterie meaning exclusive gathering of like-minded people. This is where this came about, because I mentioned earlier the this incredible circle of friends that is growing, of collectors and enthusiasts. And really at their demand, many of whom have been coming to the bridge for years and have seen what we're doing there. And there's real magic in the bridge, as you'll see when you come, Maurice, as we've shared with you. And we had collectors saying to us, you guys need to come down to Amelia Island and other places and do what you're doing for us there. We need this sort of fun, good food, shared conversation, etc. And so Jeff and I got together and thought that it would be very interesting to explore the idea first for Garcoterie, which was an idea born between the two of us, of exploring Amelia Island. And truth be told, I had actually never been to Amelia Island Concourse before, but the year that we chose to launch, which was this year, 2023, happened to be the second year of Haggerty's ownership and this sort of new attention and light being shined on the Amelia. And so that's where we got started. And Jeff can tell you a little bit more about the cars that we had there. But for our first year, heading into that, we knew that we didn't want to just show up at another golf course and have another car event. We knew that we needed to find a location that had a unique history, that had something special that would set the tone for what we wanted to create there. And we found this very special place. It's called Bent Wing Flight Services, and it's an incredible little private airport. The FBO operation itself is built on what was, or what is, it's a municipality, airport that was built by the Navy, particularly for the F4U Corsair, affectionately called the Bent Wing aircraft. And so with its incredible history and this idea of bringing together vintage aircraft, classic cars, as well as incredible new business jets and aircraft, and the cars that are representative of today's supercars, that we thought that would be a really interesting combination. So that's what we did. We launched at Amelia this year, and was very exciting. It had all the ingredients, no pun intended, that we love: great food, great drinks, great cars.
Yeah, I mean, just to go back a little bit, one of the things that always made, in our minds, the bridge work so well was the concept of hospitality first. And so, going back to what I was saying about being, a young boy going with my father to these car events and waiting in line to buy, a donut or a hot dog or something like that, and us wanting to elevate this, as high as we could. For the bridge, there's, we have 20 food stations and 20 different places to get a drink or a cocktail as you walk along the course. So, if you just walk the whole course for the bridge, you're going to walk, almost 2 miles, maybe more. It's a very, very, long walk, but you're stopping and getting a bite and having a drink and going on. And so with the hangar, what Shamin and I wanted to do was take this very important principle, this hospitality first, and bring it outside of Bridgehampton and bring it to Amelia Island, which I had been going to the Amelia and when it was the Amelia Island Concours for many, many years. And it's a fantastic event. The cars are out of this world. And what we wanted to do was just bring that bridge specialness.
All right. Well, good luck this weekend. Again, I'm sorry I can't be there, but it's been such a pleasure having you guys on the show.
Thank you for
having us.
We look forward to sharing it with you, Maurice. We really do.
Wonderful. Thank you, Shamin. And Jeff, you and I have got to have a beer sometime and just talk cars.
You got it, man.
And after 2 hours, I'll separate you both. Maurice, much appreciated. And we can't wait to have you next year.
That's all for this episode of Horsepower Heritage. Join me on Wednesday, October 4th for episode 100 of the podcast. I've got a special guest you're going to love, and the stories you'll hear will remind you why you love cars so much. Just a marvelous conversation. Support the show at buymeacoffee.com/HP Heritage. Throw a couple bucks in the gas tank. Sign up for the newsletter at horsepowerheritage.com. Click on the contact button there. Just say, send me the newsletter, and check us out on YouTube and Instagram. And until next time, I'm Maurice Merrick. Thanks for listening.